I didn't plan to record this. It's late. The house is quiet. There's a soft hum from the refrigerator, the kind you only notice when everything else has gone still. I'm sitting at the small table by the window, the one with the loose leg I keep meaning to fix but never do. I thought I might just speak for a few minutes. But once I started thinking about that day, the words kept lining up. So I'm just going to let them come out the way they come out. It was a family gathering. Nothing special. No holiday. Just one of those get-togethers that happens because someone texts and says, "We should all come by this weekend." Burgers on the grill. Kids running in and out. Music low in the background. The kind of afternoon that's supposed to feel warm and familiar. I arrived a little early, like I always do. Old habit. I rang the bell, stepped inside, and heard the noise before I saw anyone. Voices overlapping. Laughter. Someone dropping something in the kitchen and swearing under their breath. It felt good, at first. That sound. It felt like belonging. I took off my jacket and folded it over my arm, waiting for someone to tell me where to put it. No one did. They were already in the middle of conversations, already moving past me. So I walked over and draped it on the back of a chair myself. That was the first small thing. So small I almost missed it. I told myself, they're just busy. I chose a chair in the living room. Same room I've sat in 100 times. The couch was already full, kids sprawled out, shoes kicked off, feet where they shouldn't be. I didn't mind. I took the armchair by the wall. The one slightly angled away from everything. I didn't think about that at the time. It just happened. People moved around me. Past me. Over the years, I've learned the rhythm of family gatherings. When to speak. When to listen. When to wait for a pause. I waited. They talked about work. About someone's new job. About traffic. About a restaurant that opened downtown. I nodded along, smiling when it seemed right. I opened my mouth once, just slightly, to add something about that restaurant. I'd been there. I had a thought about it. But the conversation rolled right over the space where my words would have been. No one noticed. I closed my mouth again. It wasn't awkward. That's the strange part. No one was avoiding me. No one was being unkind. The air stayed light. Comfortable. Easy. I was just there. Like a piece of furniture that had always been there. A lamp doesn't get ignored. It just exists. I watched people lean toward each other when they spoke. Heads tilted. Bodies turned. Those small signals you don't think about when you're young. Who you face. Who you angle away from. No one angled toward me. At some point, someone laughed hard. One of those laughs where you throw your head back without thinking. I laughed too, a second late. My laugh sounded different in my ears. Thinner. Like it came from farther away. I remember thinking, am I still part of this moment, or just reacting to it? That question stayed with me longer than the laughter did. I looked around the room. The same room where, years ago, people used to ask me things. Real things. What I thought about a job offer. How to handle a problem with a neighbor. Whether buying that house was a good idea. They used to pause and wait for my answer. I could still see it if I tried. Someone leaning forward, elbows on knees, saying, "What do you think?" Those words used to land on me with weight. Responsibility. Trust. Now, the only pauses were for someone else to jump in. I noticed the sounds more than the words. The clink of ice in a glass. The soft buzz of a phone vibrating on a table. A child calling for someone from another room. The grill sizzling outside. No one called my name. Not because they forgot it. Because they didn't need it. I shifted in my chair. The cushion made a small noise. I wondered if anyone noticed. No one looked up. I folded my hands together, then unfolded them. I crossed my legs, uncrossed them. These little movements felt louder inside me than they probably were in the room. I told myself, don't make it a thing. So I didn't. At one point, someone asked a general question. Not to me. To the room. Something about timing. About when people wanted to eat. Voices answered over each other. I had an answer too. A reasonable one. But by the time I inhaled, the decision had already been made. I exhaled quietly. It felt familiar. That moment. Like I'd practiced it without realizing. I started paying attention to how often I spoke. I could count it. A few short comments. Nothing that shifted the direction of anything. Just small acknowledgements. Yeah. That makes sense. I remember that. Words that don't require a response. Words that don't invite follow-up. I wondered when I'd learn to talk like that. There was a time when my voice carried. Not because it was loud. But because people waited for it. I didn't dominate rooms. I never liked that. But I was included. Considered. Needed. Need is a strong word. I know that. But it's an honest one. Someone stood up near me, their knee brushing the side of my chair. They said, "Sorry," automatically, without really looking at me. I smiled and nodded. The smile felt reflexive, like muscle memory. They didn't see it. I don't know exactly when the realization settled in. It wasn't a single moment. It was more like watching the sun go down. You don't notice the exact second it gets dark. You just look up and realize it already is. I realized I could sit there all afternoon and nothing would change. No one would turn and say, "We haven't heard from you yet." No one would notice if I stayed quiet. And no one would notice if I left early. That thought surprised me with how calm it felt. Not angry. Not bitter. Just clear. I remembered other gatherings. Decades ago. When I'd stand in that same room, younger, stronger, more certain. When people would hand me things to fix. Problems to think through. When my presence shifted the shape of conversations. I wasn't smarter then. Just closer to the center. Now the center had moved. And I hadn't followed. I sat there and listened. Truly listened. There's a difference between listening because you're interested and listening because you've been left with nothing else to do. I heard the pride in a young voice talking about a promotion. I heard the tired humor in a parent complaining about schedules. I heard the impatience when someone repeated themselves because no one caught it the first time. Life moving forward. Loudly. Quickly. I didn't feel excluded from it. I felt unnecessary to it. That's a quieter kind of pain. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't demand attention. It just sits with you. I thought about interrupting once. Just once. Saying something meaningful. Reminding them I was there. That I still had thoughts. Experiences. A lifetime of them. But I didn't. Not because I couldn't. Because I didn't want to force relevance. There's a dignity in silence when the alternative is begging to be seen. So I stayed where I was. I watched the light change in the room as afternoon leaned toward evening. Shadows stretching. Lamps turning on one by one. I watched people age in real time, even as they talked about the future like it belonged entirely to them. I wondered if they could see themselves from where I was sitting. Eventually, people started moving toward food. Chairs scraping. Conversations breaking apart and reforming. No one told me where to sit. No one asked if I needed anything. Not because they didn't care. Because they assumed I'd handle myself. And I did. I ate quietly. I chewed slowly. I tasted everything. I've learned to savor moments when I'm not being spoken to. They pass more gently that way. Someone asked if anyone wanted more. The question floated past me. Someone else answered. Plates were taken. Mine stayed where it was. I didn't mind. I truly didn't. When it was time to leave, I stood up and put my jacket on. I said my goodbyes. People smiled. Hugged me. Told me to drive safe. To take care. They meant it. I believe that. I walked out to my car and sat there for a minute before starting it. The engine sounded loud in the quiet. I rested my hands on the steering wheel and stared straight ahead. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel betrayed. I felt old. Not in my body. In my place. On the drive home, I thought about how this happens without anyone deciding it should. No meeting. No agreement. Just time, doing what it does best. Shifting importance. Redistributing attention. Moving the center of the room. I'm not telling this because I want sympathy. I don't even know why I'm telling it. Maybe because someone else is sitting in a chair like that right now, wondering when they started blending into the walls. Maybe because saying it out loud makes it feel less lonely. I don't blame them. I don't blame myself. I think this is just part of living long enough to see your role change. The hardest part isn't being ignored. It's remembering when you weren't. I'm quiet now. Not because I have nothing to say. But because the world no longer pauses for it. And maybe that's okay. Maybe there's something to be said for observing. For remembering. For carrying things that no longer need to be spoken. Still, sometimes I wonder. When you're in a room full of people you love, do you notice who's gone quiet? And if so, what do you think it means?